At exactly 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986, inside a nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union, a routine safety test was about to begin. Everything seemed normal. The engineers were calm. The control panels were steady. No alarms, no warnings, just another quiet night shift. But what they didn't realize was that they were about to trigger a chain of events that would spiral completely out of control. The reactor they were working on, reactor number 4, had a hidden design flaw. A flaw that, under the wrong conditions, could turn deadly. And that night, those exact conditions were about to happen. The power levels inside the reactor began to drop unexpectedly. Operators tried to fix the issue, manually overriding safety systems, one decision after another, pushing the reactor further into instability. Inside the control room, confusion started to grow, but they continued the test. They believed everything was still under control, until suddenly, the reactor became uncontrollable. Power surged rapidly, fuel rods overheated, pressure built up inside the core, and in a matter of seconds, everything changed. A massive explosion ripped through the reactor, blowing a 1,000-ton concrete lid into the air. The roof was gone, the core was exposed, and radioactive material was now being released directly into the atmosphere. But inside the control room, many still didn't believe it had exploded, because according to everything they knew, a nuclear reactor like this simply could not explode. Inside the control room, chaos began to spread. Operators stared at the panels in disbelief. Some instruments were showing impossible readings. Others had completely failed. The explosion didn't make sense. According to Soviet design, this reactor was supposed to be stable, unbreakable. So instead of reacting immediately, many of them assumed the readings were wrong, that the system itself was malfunctioning. But outside, the situation was far worse than anyone inside could imagine. Chunks of radioactive graphite were scattered across the ground. The reactor core was now open, glowing with intense radiation, and a fire had already started. A fire that was carrying radioactive particles high into the sky, invisible, odorless, but extremely deadly. Within minutes, the radiation levels around the plant became lethal, enough to kill a human being in a short time. But no one had told the firefighters that. The firefighters arrived within minutes. Sirens echoed through the night. They rushed toward the burning reactor, thinking it was just another industrial fire. They had no protective suits, no radiation detectors, no idea what they were walking into. As they climbed onto the roof, they stepped directly onto radioactive debris, graphite from the reactor core still burning. Each step exposed them to levels of radiation that were already fatal. Some of them began to feel it almost immediately, a metallic taste in their mouths, dizziness, nausea. But they kept working. They kept fighting the fire, because that's what they were trained to do. Just a few kilometers away, in the city of Pripyat, life was completely normal. Families were sleeping. Children would wake up the next morning completely unaware of what had happened. They played outside, watched the strange glow in the sky. Some even stood on bridges, watching the fire from a distance, not knowing they were being exposed to dangerous radiation. No warnings were given, no evacuations. For nearly 36 hours, people continued their daily lives, breathing contaminated air, walking under radioactive dust, living. Finally, the truth could no longer be hidden. Buses arrived in the city. Thousands of people were told to leave immediately. They were told it would only be temporary, just a few days. So they left everything behind: homes, photos, memories, but they would never return. Today, Chernobyl remains one of the most dangerous places on Earth. A silent city, frozen in time. But the disaster didn't stop at the reactor. In the hours that followed, something even more dangerous began to happen. The Soviet government chose silence. No public warnings, no immediate evacuation, no announcement of what had really happened. Inside the control rooms of nearby cities, radiation alarms started to go off, but officials dismissed them. They believed it was a malfunction. Meanwhile, radioactive particles were rising higher into the atmosphere, carried by the wind, across borders, across entire countries. By the next morning, radiation levels had already begun to increase in parts of Europe, but no one knew where it was coming from. It wasn't until a nuclear plant in Sweden detected unusual radiation that the truth started to emerge. Something catastrophic had happened somewhere in the Soviet Union, and it was spreading. In the days that followed, the full scale of the disaster became impossible to hide. Dozens of workers and firefighters began to fall seriously ill. Radiation sickness spread rapidly. Skin burns, internal damage, organs shutting down. Hospitals quickly filled with victims. Doctors struggled to understand what they were seeing. Many had never treated radiation exposure before, and the numbers kept growing. Entire areas were declared uninhabitable. Forests turned red and died. Animals disappeared, and the land itself became poisoned. Even today, more than 3 decades later, some areas remain too dangerous for human life. Chernobyl became a symbol, not just of disaster, but of human error, of overconfidence, of the belief that technology could be controlled, no matter the risk.